So this afternoon's topic is truth, trust, and democracy. These three things are essentially interrelated in societies where the media play a crucial role in promoting and nurturing democracy. And the media do so by reporting the truth and serving as a check on the powerful and providing forum for members of the public to exchange views and their diverse opinions. All this is done, to make sure that the public can make informed decisions, which is something very crucial in any democracy. But the bad news is that the trust in the media in countries across the world, Thailand and Australia included, has been on a consistent decline. And in the process, the faith in democracy also declines. And this is all because fewer and fewer people trust the media to report the truth. And people have come to believe that the media, in many cases anyway, have become more biased and more partisan. And all this happens in the face of the rise in the influence of social media, which, as we all know, and we have been talking this since this morning, that it has been the source of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. So this afternoon, our speakers will offer their views on the responsibilities and challenges the media face in trying to restore trust and faith in democracy. But first and foremost, trust and faith in themselves, all right? I will start by having our speakers talk about the things that they have in their prepared remarks. I'll start with Dr. Surachanee then, okay.
All right, thank you, Thepchai, and good afternoon. It's my honor to be here this afternoon with you guys, and honestly, I'm a little bit intimidated to be in the same room with you guys, such a seasoned media practitioners here. The fact that I have remarked script in hand shows how nervous I am. But while I'm here, I would like to, as a digital politics enthusiast, I would like to highlight some of the points about the role of media in the digital age to uphold the truth and also rebuild public trust in our democratic institutions. And of course, just like Thepchai just mentioned, the media has always been regarded as the fourth estate of democracy, as crucial gatekeeper that holds power accountable and informs citizens. Yet, the trust in media in the recent years have been in decline. And this decline is not just a matter of public opinion, but it strikes at the heart of our democratic principles. The latest survey by the Reuters Institute reports that politics, of course, unsurprisingly, remains the topic that people are most concerned about when it comes to the content that they consume, for it to be fake or misleading, along with others such as health information or the news about the war in Gaza and Ukraine as well. To address this crisis, right, the media itself must also first grapple with their own challenges. And with the digital age that have bring about unprecedented speech and reach of the news dissemination, it has also brought about, of course, a proliferation of unreliable sources and misleading contents. Citizen journalists and independent news outlets can now be double-edged sword, and social media platforms tend to amplify the problem as they prioritize virality of content over accuracy. Journalists today, as we in this room, I was hearing what you guys are talking about this morning as well, have faced an immense pressure to break news first. The round-the-clock news cycle demands constant updates, leading to rushed reporting and sometimes sensationalism. In this environment, mistakes are inevitable, but they come at a cost as well. And that cost means an undermining of the credibility of the entire profession. Yet, I think it's very important for professional journalists not to be discouraged from producing high-quality, truthful content. Many media organizations are now doubling down on rigorous journalistic standards. They're investing in fact-checking teams, promoting transparency about their sources, and engaging more deeply with their audiences, which is great. And I think these are crucial steps towards rebuilding trust, and we need more of that. We people need more of that, while also being mindful of the disparity of resources across the news ecosystem as well. But the responsibility, I'm at this point where the responsibility doesn't solely rest on journalists and newsrooms. Ordinary citizens, as consumer of news, we also bear responsibility too. While governments also look to media literacy as an antidote to combat the infodemic, I think it's even more important to cultivate the culture of critical thinking. And what I like to call vigilant information intake. Teaching ourselves and our community, especially the young generation, to actively discern credible sources from misinformation and to resist the temptation to share sensational headlines without verifying the accuracy. With the domain and the way that the young people prefer to consume information and news, they can be even more susceptible to this and misinformation. Relatedly, tech companies and social media companies also play a role in this as well. The report from Reuters Institute, I just mentioned earlier, also showed that social media platforms have become primarily news sources for many people. Thailand, for example, 39% of the respondents in that survey that age below 25 consume their news primarily from TikTok, while the global average is only 23%. In the grand scheme of things, right, the concerning part is that most of the content regulations apply to legacy media and traditional media do not apply to content on social media platforms. So I think it's also time to push platforms to prioritize the promotion of accurate information over viral content. Algorithms should also be designed not just to maximize engagement, but to ensure that users are exposed to diverse viewpoints and reliable sources. Ultimately, restoring trust in democracy requires collective efforts. It demands a renewed commitment to truth and integrity from both the media and the public. It requires us to hold ourselves accountable for the information that we consume and share. And it necessitates the reevaluation of the incentives driving our digital information ecosystem. As we navigate this challenge, let us also remember that the stakes are high, and the media can still really drive some of the key agendas into the forefront of public attention. I also want to quickly add that not every socio-political issues that we're facing today can be attributed to this and misinformation. In fact, recent study, also including my research as well, have found less and less evidence that of disinformation affecting people's behavior. Sometimes the problems stem from even deeper rooted factors. But at the end of the day, people's ability to make informed decisions as citizens, to hold our leaders accountable, and to participate meaningfully in democratic process hinges upon our access to reliable information. And you guys sitting here in the room can really make a difference. And thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Surachanee. You mentioned the need for the more established media to strike back with fact-checking, with more truthful reportings. But given the influence of the social media these days, especially among younger people, so how effective do you think this kind of fighting back by the traditional media can be?
I think, just as one of the panelists from the previous session just mentioned, it's difficult, but we shouldn't give up, right? In terms of trying to leverage with the social media platform, it's an uphill battle for everyone involved. They're so opaque and they have pretty low liability in a lot of ways. So it's difficult, but I'm just hoping that I can be optimistic about it. And Dr. Fuadi would say that it's quite rare for me to try to be optimistic, but it's good to be hopeful because it's an uphill battle for everybody, and we need to go on this fight together.
Yes. No, it could be one way for the established media to stay relevant. All right.
Definitely.
Okay. Next question, Fuadi, you may want to give us a regional perspective on this issue.
Okay. Let me try. It doesn't work. Okay. Okay. As someone who is trained in academia and in theory, we like to explain things in pictures, group things, and trying to make sense of the social and political phenomena. So you have all heard, I think, working in this field, that the media is the fourth estate. But let me remind you that, wow, can't really see anything. The other three, the first three, the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. Traditional media, the fourth estate, was formed the role of acting as check and balances against the first three. I think these are all, you are familiar with this, and this has been your role and very important role in our democratic development. So the advantages of traditional media, right? You guys have editors, you guys have internal check and balances before something is put out. So that's really good. You guys have very clear ideology. Some may try to say that they are non-partisan, neutral, but we are humans, right? So we do influence our personal opinion do influence our news reporting. Or even some, the good thing about traditional media is that even though it's like Fox News, it's like NBC, CNN, the ideological underpinning, the foundation is very clear. And that is what's good about the fourth estate, the traditional media. But the problem is the media is usually a business, except Thai PBS, except PBS. It has owners, it needs to make money, it has its own opinion, which is not always beneficial to our society, our democratic development, to fix our social ills. So this is where the fifth estate come in, right? Think about the community, think about the citizen, the people, the civil society. They are now empowered by social media to have their own channel to speak out. So this is where the advantages of this is that it acts as a check and balance against the editors, against the fourth estate. So the fifth is checking against the fourth, right? But the problem is the fifth estate, the social media, the content driven by people, by the citizens, do not have editors, right? No one is checking it. So a lot of times you are engaged in misinformation, you are engaged in false information. So the relationship between the fourth and fifth are very, very important, right? Social media enables civil society, citizens to have their own media to speak out, but it doesn't have that check and balances. So this is where it comes in. The fifth has to check and balance against the fifth, while the fifth also check and balance against the fourth. Together, the 4.5, the fourth and fifth, checks against the first three. I think this is how I make sense of how all these players within the five estates help build a healthy democracy. So I just leave it at that first.
Okay. So you're saying that it's not fair to blame the social media for being totally responsible for the decline in the people's faith in democracy, right?
No, I think because a lot of time they also help. They do call out politicians, they do call out the media, the far-right media, the totally left-wing media as well. So I think the emergence of social media is both pro and con. But they don't have any editors, they don't have accountability. So it falls upon people like Thai PBS, traditional media, to correct some of these misinformation. So there's a real role for the fourth estate.
Okay. All right, now we come to Australia, which is one of the countries that are seeing a decline in people's trust in the media. I understand that recently the government set up a commission to look into what it sees as negative impacts of social media platforms on people's faith in democracy. And I think that is one of the major issues now that the media are highlighting. So can you talk about that?
So in Australia, so yes, it's actually right. The Australian government has set up a joint committee to look at the impact of social media platform on democracy and the Australian society as a whole. I just going to kind of wanted to add it, the importance of public service media and of the ABC in particular, the national broadcaster of Australia for the Australian society. Although we've been talking about the decline in trust, in general. Very, very happy to report that we still actually have very high level of trust at the ABC. And there's, so we conduct research, independent research, to measure this audience level. And trust is actually one of our key KPIs as an organization. So we don't just look at audience reach in terms of the numbers, but it's a level of trust, and we hold ourselves accountable. Now, to put things in, to provide the background to this, is the ABC was established in 1932. So we have a long-standing legacy and an evolution that allowed us to reach that level of trust. But most importantly, we were set up by an act of a federal parliament, and our independence is mandated by law. So it's an advantage that we have, and very appreciate that not all countries or not all settings provide this kind of environment where the independence of your public broadcaster is mandated and is protected. And that certainly is one of the factors that would contribute to the level of trust that we have from the Australian public. I had prepared a statement, going with responsibility of the media, the challenges that we all face, but I think I'll be repetitive here because a lot of that has been said, especially you'll notice the reference to the Reuters Institute digital report as being a Bible. I think everyone is basically essentially just constantly referring to that, and it's so important to keep ourselves up to speed in terms of those trends. But one element I wanted to share is in terms of, so we have very specific values as a public media that we apply that I would imagine would be similar to what Thai PBS would be applying. So those are, we serve a public interest, we're independent, accountable, we represent the diversity of our population, and we also adapt to new technologies. So these are core values that we apply at the ABC. We also are very conscious of those challenges and of the risk of losing trust and the impact that social media has had on our performance, our ability to reach our audience. And we have a number of measures that we have put in place, and I'm happy to delve into that if I have a bit of time.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've kind of listed a few of the key initiatives which I felt were quite successful and could be of interest to other delegates. So we are transparent in our ways of working, and that is really key to establish trust with the Australian public. When I speak about transparency, is transparency in our operations. Obviously, our funding is a matter of public knowledge, but we explain how we do the news. And that is very important because if people don't know how the news is produced, they'll be skeptical about what they read and what they see. Our editorial standards and policy are available to the general public, and we train our staff and we review our performance against those standards. But we also have a rigorous audience complaint handling mechanism where members of the public are invited to put out complaints and ask questions, and we take active steps in terms of addressing those. We have recently, actually this week, have launched an initiative, a fact-checking unit within ABC News that I think my colleague Matt, sitting over there, might be talking about in one of the next sessions. But it's a dedicated unit within our newsrooms that is set up to tackle misinformation and disinformation online. The very first story was about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. So I invite you to check out our website if you're interested. We also have taken steps in terms of getting closer to the communities that we serve. So it's very important as a public media to decentralize. We've all had a tendency to have, operator from our headquarters and engage with audience from those headquarters in a country like Australia, but the same would apply to many other countries. you want to serve the entire population. You are meant to serve the entire population. And the best way to do this is to have journalists that are based close to the communities, who knows of the communities, knows of the stories that matter. So there's been investment in decentralizing our operations. There's a recent relocation to 300 staff being relocated to new studios outside Sydney, central Sydney. So just an example of an investment that is very valued. So we have a number of initiatives that we feel we have to continue investing in, and because maintaining trust. So even though we are mandated by law, and when it comes to independence, and we have a long legacy, and the Australian public trust us, we know that that is very fragile in the current context. So we constantly have to invest and reach the audience where it consumes context, takes those initiatives. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nesryn. I mean, coming back to the issue of the inquiry commission, I think, is this something that members of the public in Australia agree with? Because critics see it as an attempt at censorship. And this should serve as a good model for other countries which are having problem with what they see as negative impacts of the social media as well.
So to put things in context, that committee was established in May. The submissions are still, I think the closing date for the submissions was end of June. So there's, it's available, all the submissions are available are in the public domains. Very interestingly, the social platforms, so there was a submission by Meta, Facebook, and a submission by Google, and it is so interesting to read. One of the things that I have found, well, sad actually, is that we've been having all of these discussion and debate, and we do not have representatives from these platforms. Not that they've not been invited, as far as I know they have, they just don't engage. And when I read the submissions that they've put into the joint committee, to me, and I'm being recorded, but it is a denial of this impact, and of the fact that they operate in a completely unregulated environment, do not take any editorial responsibilities for the content that is published on those platforms. So that joint committee, I'm hoping, will review those submissions. There was a submission from the ABC, submissions from members of the public. Everyone was invited. So there's a number of individuals who actually put in their position, and also explain how they're being impacted by misinformation on social media, the impact that it has on mental health as well. So I see this as a very positive step that I'm glad our government has taken, because it's a very important discussions to have. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And a lot has been mentioned about the role of public broadcasting. So last week I asked ChatGPT why the public media is still needed in this age of AI, right? And the answer is that yes, public media is still necessary, because at the end of the day, GPT needs trustworthy source of news to copy from. Okay, that even ChatGPT agrees with us that the role of the big media is very important, right? So, okay, Kun Kavi, please.
Well, thank you very much, Kun Thepchai. I'd like to welcome all of you to Thailand, because Thailand is the media lab, biggest in the world, where half truth, half trust, and no more democracy can create a government. So you are enter a very great gray areas. And you are looking at the biggest victim, the biggest casualty of traditional journalism. I look old, I'm very slow. I write my articles, my column, it takes 4 days. I don't ask ChatGPT, because ChatGPT would say that, oh my God, you're so slow, you have no future. I don't have any futures. Wrong. Just say that you have to connect to your audience. All my audience have died. Nobody read English anymore. I wrote in my column 102,050 words. And letters I check, I have precisely 22 readers. Thank you very much. And this is what social media has done to me. Now, what is the problem? You talk about social media, you talk about how great it is. Lucky, Thai PBS had no problem. Because Thai PBS can have all the time, all the image, everything. I still have to raise. You think 1 week is long? No, if you write in English, you write in Thai, you can bullshit. But you write in English, 3 words, oh my God, plagiarism, you are dead in the wood. In Bangkok, you will say that you're dead in the traffic anyway. So, what to do? The most important from what I'm listening is that fact-checking in the social media is still lacking. I think earlier, one panelist talking about UNESCO. I happen to be part of UNESCO for the past 17 years. UNESCO have suggested that all the social media unit, whatever you're doing, webpage, you must have a guy, a journalist who do traditional way of checking sources. In Thailand, they said you have fact checking. Oh yes, I checked 3 sources. It happened to be the same sources, hot and spicy. The same source from the same one single wrong one. And that is the problem, because in Thailand, half truth, it's truth. Half trust, it's trust. That is why we create the world's most dynamic democracy. I'm sorry, Fuadi, our 5th pillar, have not done that job very well. So the problem with social media is fact-checking. If with fact-checking, as you know, you're tracking the audience. I don't know my audience anymore. You know why? I know only issue that is important for my country at the moment. So I write about it. I am the early warning system. I'm sorry, nobody read it. But you have ChatGPT who can translate in Thai or into any other languages. So social media still lack the kind of credibility. And my goodness, AI is very useful. It's very useful when you don't want to do your homework. You order AI to do anything. But for me, I cannot do that. Because one day, I tell you, I have told Mr. Thepchai, a friend of mine, an intelligence officer, sent me an article titled, Write About ASEAN Like Mr. Kavi Chongkittavorn. And he sent to me that article. And it's under my name. But I have not written it. It's very similar style as I have written. Oh my God, that's the end of me. So now I change my style completely. Now I write, I'm like Tarantino, the director of Bill. Open scene, I chop the head. No more. Blah, 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 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then the conclusion. When I start, the government doomed to die. That's it. No more, not saying that, there's an election coming, and no more. So that changed my attitude toward the AI. So you have to put your emotional, you have to say what really you want, and also you write in English, make sure you put some Thai words to confuse algorithm of ChatGPT. And damn, the editor said that, Kavi, I know what it means in Thai. Don't have to put in Thai. I said I have to, because otherwise GPT will not be confused. So I will say Thai word. Because I write in English. In the past, I have no problem in the past 39 years. Now, I'm done because of ChatGPT. I have to use ChatGPT now. Why? Because I said, what did I say wrong? I said, you did not say something wrong. I have no information enough. Can you look at other things first? Now I have complexity. I have many other things to help me. So check facting. You need human, because human like me have emotion and they get mad. Thank you.
That was great. That was great. But I think, Kun Kavi, you have been too pessimistic because I believe that long-form news pieces are not something that are automatically rejected by readers. I think judging from what we have been offering our audiences, I mean, through the various services of Thai PBS, long-form article, long-form pieces are quite well received if the contents, I mean, strike the right chord with our audiences. But coming back to the issue that Kun Kavi just raised about the role of the journalists in this modern media landscape, I think Kun Kavi is a good example of the old school journalist in the sense that he spent time, he invested resources in really understanding issues that he writes about. And this is exactly what we expect the mainstream media, the more established media at present to do. But the irony is that with most of the media outlets, especially those in Thailand, are bleeding financially. I mean, it would be too much of an expectation. I mean, to see them invest more in building resources like Kun Kavi again. So back to Dr. Surachanee. So how do we deal with irony? Because as I mentioned earlier in my morning, the presentation, that many of the mainstream media outlets are dying out. And they are not investing as much as they used to do in areas of investigative reporting or serious reporting.
That's a really tough question. I wish I had the perfect answer to that. And that's kind of what I meant as well when I talk about like the disparity of resources, right? When it comes to the commitment or how different newsroom can uphold their journalistic standard and stuff like that. It's really tough, especially in Thailand. I think from what I heard from my media friends as well, that this is what they have been grappling with. I really don't have the answer for this, really, but I guess what the traditional media can do, it's still kind of like the intersectionality of how they can make news that people really care about and would like to consume and then put it on the right platform versus, having truthful news reporting. And the reality is that truth is boring. It's really dry, and Thai people for some reason love this like soap opera sensationalized type of content, right? And that's kind of
something that's trendy but cheaply done. Right?
Yes, and I think therefore it's not just the media or the journalists that have to be have to be held responsible, but I think it's the audience themselves as well, right? In terms of what type of information that they care about. And that's beyond anyone's control. It's beyond, the media journalist control. Like Kun Kavi just mentioned, he writes such a wonderful pieces, and only 20 people in Thailand read it, right? So, I mean, it comes down to more individualistic approach of how people consume information as well. Until people realize that truthful, important content is something that they should care more about, then there's really not much we can do.
Okay, but those 20 people who read Kun Kavi's articles are decision makers.
Yeah, there you go, Kun Kavi.
One of them is me.
And me.
No, the point here is very important because social media and all the famous podcasts, influencers, they know exactly what the audience wants. So they cater to your interest. My style is different. I write things I think is the concern, the public concern. It might not, the audience ABC is out there, might not listen, but in general, they like in Thailand, as you said, news has to be a form of entertainment. ฟังข่าวแล้วมัน is that, exciting. It's much better than watching TV, watching. It must be, watching YouTube is better than anything. That's what the audience want. That's the problem. And I have big problem. Help.
Okay. So, Dr. Fuadi, coming back to the topic of this afternoon session, that truth, trust, and democracy. So, you see any positive trend toward more people's faith in democracy, with all the bad news about democracy, happening around the world these days?
I do. I think there is a lot to cheer for, and I help a certain political party here think about policy, and I do feel that there is a lot of hope, a lot of goodwill, that despite the challenges, despite things that are not so hopeful, I think the citizens have already been awoken, and I think it's very hard to put them back into a caste again. I think that has already been open, and the citizens are very active online, on social media. Yes, there are problems of unchecked facts, of misinformation. That is why the role of traditional media, particularly public broadcast media like Thai PBS, ABC, are still very, very crucial, because you guys are less influenced by interests, by business interests, by other interest groups, because it's written by law that you have to survive. There's a certain budget. I think that is very important in this day and age. And I always say to my friends who want objectivity, who wants to follow Thai politics, to read and watch Thai PBS.
Okay, thank you. So Nesryn, back to Australia. Besides ABC Australia, what about the rest of the mainstream medias? Do they see the roles in fighting back all this fake news and disinformation one of their priorities or not?
Well, actually, if you go back to that, those submissions I was talking about, and that joint committee, you'd see that there's submissions from all the commercial media as well, all the independent media in Australia. So there's definitely concerns at that level. A key element with all of the discussions that we've been having, and I think that's where this committee will be looking at, is regulations. So one of the challenges that we're having with social platforms is that they've been allowed to grow completely unregulated. Traditional media, you can't just put anything out there without, there will be consequences. They are regulators. They are, legal avenues for people to take when something is being said on a broadcast platform. There is no consequences, there's no accountability. In Australia, our government attempted to actually set up the news bargaining code. I know the European Commission have digital act looking at regulating those platforms. The challenge is that they operate at a global level. They've grown so powerful, and that's why we end up having this big conversation here, and no one from Meta, no one from YouTube, no one is coming and engaging. There's that pressure. So something has to happen at that level, and that is a discussion that is happening in Australia. Now, the challenge is we've seen what's happened in Canada, where regulation was put in place, and Meta just said, okay then, no more news on these platforms. It hasn't impacted Meta, but it has impacted the Canadian people who, like in the context of an election, have found, political candidates just claiming whatever they want on Facebook, going completely unchallenged on these platforms, because that is still where people go and consume news. So that is definitely something that I think all collectively need to engage in and lobby and advocate for. For those platforms to operate in the same playing field that we are.
All right. Okay, thank you. We have just 1 minute left. So any last word from any one of you?
To follow up on my answer, we talk about the Reuters Institute report ranking. I was very surprised to see how high Thai PBS was ranked on that list, right? And I wonder, and you asked me about whether I have hope or not. I'm wondering if how much engagement a public broadcasting agency receive online on digital platform can be a good indicator of hope of a democratic health I think we should look into this. And in other countries, I'm not sure if it's the same or not, but in Thailand, I'm very hopeful when I see Thai PBS ranking quite high on that list.
Okay. No?
Well, I think Thailand has one biggest problem. The biggest problem is the quality of journalism because it has not yet reached the level of the freedom they have enjoyed. So there is a big gap. I think it's very important for journalists or the future journalists in Thailand train themselves, educated themselves so they understand comprehensively fake news, good news, disinformation, malinformation, whatever, to be a good journalist to compensate with and to complement the freedom that they have, that they enjoy every day in Thailand. That's what I like to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Khun Kavi. So let's give our panelists a big hand. Okay. So thank you very much.